All right, we are live. Thanks.
Howdy! Welcome to the last GA meeting of the semester. After this, you'll all have slightly more free time. All right, back on track. Now, we'll start with new business. We do have a fair amount of it, so let's get to it. Perna, you want to start us off?
Okay.
Perna.
Me?
Oh, a second.
I'm still chewing. Give me a second.
All hail.
So we're almost done with our community searches. I haven't sent out any emails, so I've been receiving like very frantic emails from a lot of people. So we're almost there, and I will have them all sent out by tomorrow morning, hopefully, right? The other officers, yeah. We're gonna discuss after. We should be good to go. All I really had, yeah.
All right. All right, moving on from that, we will now have a presentation on Sage from Corinna Lynn. Okay.
So we went to a conference a few weeks ago, in Advocates for Graduate Education, the Day on the Hill conference. So this is the mission statement. We represent over 200,000 graduate and professional students. The requirement is to be in a Tier 1 public research university. Public, it is committed to accessibility, affordability issues for graduate education. So these are the universities that are represented, and we sent 3 invites this year. So University of Tennessee, hopefully University of Florida,
University of Colorado.
So we met with the Office of Federal Relations. So just so you know, there's a system, Office of Federal Relations. They work and live in DC. So Scott Sutta, who's behind me back there, he's an assistant vice chancellor, and Valerie. So I'm not sure who's going to be in my position next year, but these are people to know, because whenever we send a resolution out addressed to federal members, these are who we contact, and they give us the most up-to-date contacts of these are the staffers for immigration, these are staffers for higher education. So we talk to them pretty frequently. They're also a resource, so if you have questions about any sort of policy and how it might affect graduate education, well, you should direct it to the XCOM, but they could ask these individuals about to do an analysis of the bill and see how it might affect graduates. So SAGE is separated into 2 different types of conferences. So there's a fall conference and there's a spring conference. So the fall conference is more about learning how different universities, graduate student associations kind of work and talk about these issues more on the state and local level. So these are some of the issues we talk about. Unionization is something that the University of Pittsburgh is trying to do right now. We talk about how healthcare is structured across different universities, how academic freedom, like policies that might hinder academic freedom and such. One issue that has gotten more attention the last few years is housing, not so much for us, but like in San Diego, Seattle, things like that. Housing is a big issue that I think we need to kind of watch on. And I'm not sure if I put another slide in here, but for this year, the fall summit was in University of Pittsburgh, but this next year is going to be at UT. So there's an opportunity for a lot of us to go over there. It does require some funding, so whether we have funding or you could fund yourself to go over there, but that's something to look out for in the fall. It's typically around October of each fall. So these are the issues. Oh, and then after the fall summit, everybody votes on issues that we feel are pertinent nationally. So these are the issues that we had identified nationally to exist across all of our campuses. And then there were working groups. And so working groups between October through, I think it was March, these different groups got together and were kind of like being like watchdogs, monitoring legislation, trying to look at bills that are coming up, talking to different universities about how these bills or these issues affect them specifically. So these are all the issues that we brought up, but these were the final 4 issues that we voted on to bring. And so we had cut diversity, inclusion, and campus wellness, and the reason why we had cut them, so through advocacy, part of it is, it's not just, you know, of course, all these issues are important, but how do we address them is also a really big issue. Some of these things might not be best addressed, like diversity inclusion is, some of the things that were recommended were more pertinent on the state level because some things that were recommended were illegal in some other states. So some of these issues can better be addressed in certain ways. But also, it's also a product of how the paper is written. So we had written white papers, and it was really important that each of the papers had good statistics, were properly formatted, really had a good story, and had very concrete asks. And so concrete asks doesn't mean that we need to point specifically towards a piece of policy, but we need to say, we can't just say, increase mental health resources. We need to say increase counselor to student ratio by this percentage or whatever.
And I'll just add, so I got involved probably starting in December. I was on the student finance working group. So I just kind of jumped in. We probably met every 3 to 4 weeks, so maybe 1 to 2 times a month. So you're meeting with other students throughout the country, and so it's like a Skype call basically. So we would go. So I was on the finance, so we were looking at the Prosper Act specifically. So we did research of like how graduate loans impact. So Prosper, as we'll see later, we'll talk about graduates. There were 2 issues: graduate loans and then the public service loan forgiveness. So I was specifically looking at how graduate loans impact graduate education and how Prosper would affect that. So just kind of doing background research on that.
And so I would encourage you guys, there's gonna be a call for people to be on these working committees, and if you're on a working committee, it's probably gonna be, your priority is gonna be bumped to sponsor you to go to UT to represent us, and then maybe eventually in the spring if we have more funding, but I'd really recommend that if you're interested in federal, national advocacy, that you get involved early. And there are also calls on a weekly basis, or not weekly, monthly. Calls on a monthly basis. You're always welcome to join. We do have 1 voting member, and so that was me this year. But you're always welcome to join to hear how these conversations. So Legislator of the Year this year, we gave this, something new that the organization did. We did a Legislator of the Year award, and this year we gave it to John Garamendi. And so Garamendi, every year he brings a student debt bill on the floor, but this student debt bill specifically has provisions related to graduate student education and graduate debt, which is structured very differently than undergraduate debt. The bill is called Student Loan Refinancing and Recalculating Act. He brings it up every year. So we felt to honor him by giving him recognition. So we're gonna start going into some of the topics that we talked about. I don't know, what you want to talk about?
Sure. So one of the things that we go in asking for pretty much every year is increased research. We know that most of us rely on federal dollars trickling down to us to fund our projects. We know it's what hires us. We know it's what gives us jobs here. And so contributions are a bit down overall compared to long-term averages. They did do a small increase last year, and we have asked them to do another increase this year. A lot of the argument is just, one, it provides jobs. You're all here. Most of you are hired for your project. Those are jobs provided by those dollars. They like that. They also know that there's a huge return on investment. I mean, depending on what agency you're giving the dollar to, you're putting money in, money's going to recirculate. That shows most of the university money goes in, then it just circulates locally. I think one of the figures I saw in NASA, every dollar you put in, you get $13 back in the economy. So I mean, huge return on investment. And so we've asked for them to do that. We've also asked them to increase this year specifically by a minimum of 5% across the board. That's to keep up with both inflation as well as the higher education price index. Some of you might remember that from the talk on fees and tuition earlier this year. Yes, there's inflation across the nation. Inflation for things specific for education is really higher. And then we also asked them to support public-private partnerships. I myself, I'm an oceanographer, so I get to work with Shell. So we basically asked, hey, that's dollars that the federal government doesn't have to put in, but if you can incentivize companies to do this, that'll help cover a lot of holes where you don't need to put in as much money. So we asked for tax incentives for that. We asked for, but yeah, research funding is a big one that we always ask.
And it's important to phrase your research in a way that they can understand. And Chris did a good job of that.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about basic research. And so one of the things that came out of my department fairly recently was detecting red tides. So before red tides happen, you just kind of sit there and then, oh, a week later, yeah, there was a red tide. A bunch of people got sick. A lot of people ate shellfish they shouldn't have had. A lot of people had skin irritation. Now we actually are out there and we're able to detect it within 2 days of the population beginning to grow. And so we can put out reports straight up to the entire coastline that's going to be affected saying, hey, shut down your fisheries. Don't let people swim. And huge impact, millions of people every single day. And that's all from basic research funding. And so sharing these kinds of stories are really some of the important pieces that we can give to legislatures, because those are things they can turn around and share with the person next to them, share with the next legislature. These are things they're going to remember. Otherwise, if we go out there and we use as much jargon as we can because we want to be smart, they don't know it. So it goes straight in the trash can, right? We need to make sure it's relatable, and talking about stories is one of the best ways we can do that.
Something Sage is going to focus on next year is to try to move the conversation away from just STEM, but also try to focus on increasing funding for humanities and arts. So we also did an immigration paper. So you guys saw the resolutions. I was working on those papers. I also wrote those resolutions. So they're similar. But the story was just that, a lot of our most prosperous companies are founded by immigrants. And it's really important to incentivize immigrants if they want to continue to stay here. And so we can do that by increasing H-1B visas or increasing the availability of permanent employment-based visas.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so this is a paper I helped write. So we had an introduction where we kind of gave general statistics. So for example, your average graduate degree is about 26,000, 40,000, whether in-state or out of state. But the average master's degree, you're taking about debt of about $57,000, right? So for a lot of graduate students, they do turn to graduate federal loans to finance those graduate education. And yeah, as it shows on there, it's about 63%, with the other being stipends, tuition waivers, and scholarships. So we also showed that graduate students have a lower default rate compared to undergraduates or those who don't complete degrees. So obviously financing graduate education has a good return on investment. And then we went into talking about graduate loans and how I guess, are you going to talk about later with the Prosper presentation about?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just summarize that Prosper is trying to cap graduate student loans. You'll hear about it in a few minutes. So we were asking that the federal government would maintain graduate student loans up to the cost of attendance. And then also there was another paragraph on supporting public service loan forgiveness. If you're in the PSLF, if you serve in a nonprofit, it's ill-defined, but if you serve in the public service sector for 10 years, you can have your student loans forgiven. Prosper would do away with that, and you'll hear about that in
The other thing that we brought up was sexual assault. So we brought up the power dynamics that are unique to graduate students, how our bosses are our supervisors, people that manage our careers for the next 4 or 5 years. And so there's interesting kind of dynamics for specifically graduate students. And so we wanted to bring that up. And then Prosper also has, so Prosper is the Higher Education Reauthorization Act. They're trying to push this out in Congress soon. And so some of our language was to try to combat some of the things that they were removing, or provisions that they were repealing that we thought were helpful for graduate students. But one of them for Prosper was, I think, to do away with the Clery Act. And the Clery Act is something on each individual campus where they are required to report statistics about sexual assault. And so this paper was to try to increase reporting. Yeah, just to try to let them know that this issue also specifically affects graduate students, and that there's some reporting needs that we would like.
Yeah, and that second bullet point should be,
Oh,
so one of our S, yeah.
Not
So the
there.
second S that we had was supporting CASA, the Campus Accountability and Safety Act, I think is what it's called.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, this was actually something that was a bit of a surprise. A lot of staffers on the Hill are grad students. A lot of them are professional students. But one thing that is not something that they feel as keenly is the relationship with when you're doing that, or the more in-depth research. One of the things that our group used to kind of demonstrate is the fact that these people, your advisors, are the judge, jury, and executioner for your research, your career, right? All of us, most of us, I'm sure, feel that. And so that puts us in a very tricky position if they are being sexually inappropriate. And I think that's a relationship that a lot of people outside academia don't understand. And so that is one of the things that we us that actually a lot of people on the Hill were just surprised at.
So we met with some representatives, that's Flores, and then that's O group over there. That's it. We really want to thank OGAPS, who isn't here. And all of you, I guess, are where our funding comes from. So yeah, so the three of us got to go. It was a really great experience, and it was a trip that was fully funded. And this is an organization that is really important for GPSC. And so hope to continue to see involvement next year. Do you have any questions?
All right, next up will be a presentation, as you heard, about Prosper. So Brenna, come on down the front. And then Adam, are you here as well? Excellent.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Fantastic. Howdy, everybody. My name is Adam Eaton, and obviously you all know Brennan by now. If you don't, anyway. So this is a real quick presentation on the Prosper Act, promoting real opportunity, success, and prosperity through education reform. As Brenna mentioned earlier, it's basically reauthorization of the Higher Education Act, which was a part of the Great Society program instituted in the 1960s by Lyndon Johnson. So he made higher education a part of his major platform. As you can see, increasing financial assistance to low and middle income families. All these bullet points included in his educational platform really built our education system where it is now, higher education system where it is now. The last time the Higher Education Act was reauthorized was in 2013. So congressional Republicans have put forth what they're calling the Prosper Act as the next step in reauthorization. And you'll notice they use the word reform. Get to what that means. As we all know, higher education is facing challenges, and it all pretty much boils down to money. Whether that's money coming from the university or whether that's money on our side, we're facing enormous student debt. Colleges have to weigh out keeping affordability versus quality, as we heard earlier this semester. Universities trying to improve the quality of our research as a tier 1 research facility. But that means increasing fees and increasing tuition. So they're trying to balance how to make us a better university with also keeping it affordable. Sexual assault is obviously another really high concern, more so lately. And academic freedom, civil rights, and social issues. So these are all issues that I think we're all pretty aware of. But all this ties into what they were hoping to form through the Prosper Act. So this was introduced this past December. It's currently in committee, I believe, the Workforce and Education. So it hasn't really gone anywhere, but I know, as Brenna said, they're trying to pass it through pretty.
I think ask committee just
Hasn't been brought before yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the Senate's trying to come up with their version right now. Alexander And so that this is priority.
Trying to do it before the midterms.
Yeah.
So under the Prosper Act, they've identified 4 main goals. You can see promoting innovation, access and completion, and through that, they're going to try and strengthen workforce development, so essentially develop programs in universities and institutions that focus more on getting students in and out quickly to get into high-paying. Innovative learning, they're looking into how to reform distance learning to make it easier for some students to attend classes without having to come to a physical unit. They're also looking at ways to make work study easier for students as well as graduates, undergrads as well as graduate students.
One key point is they eliminate work study for graduate students.
Right, I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that in a second. So this is just what came on this bill summary put out by the Workforce and Education Committee. So I'll make sure this gets a link to this gets included in the minutes. But you'll see a difference between how SAGE reacts, how NAFSA reacts versus what's in this. This sounds pretty, and this sounds pretty bad. So, some of the other goals they're looking at. Obviously, Republicans want to eliminate regulation. It's all about eliminating regulation. So essentially, they're trying to streamline the education process, streamline the financial process for education and financial aid. So the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators actually supports parts of this. Some of the points that they support are that it increases access to Pell Grants. So you don't have to, you can have more than 15 credit hours and still get a Pell Grant. And if you have less than 15, you're not penalized for that. It also increases undergraduate loan limits. And as we said earlier, it caps graduate loan limits. Which we'll get to in a second. It eliminates the loan origination fee, which gets rolled into your student loan. So you're actually paying more to take out a loan. And it streamlines repayment options eventually for graduate students and undergrads to take student loans. It also gives institutions the authority to limit loans. So right now it's kind of set by the federal government, especially if you go through the U.S. Department of Ed. Now Texas A&M would get to say how much undergrads and graduates are allowed to borrow. And again, it relaxes some of the federal work study requirements. Here's some areas of concern. It cuts a lot of funding, especially for graduate students. We lose the PLUS loan. We lose, how many of you are familiar with the public service loan forgiveness? Okay, that goes away. It also eliminates grants, teach grants for grad students, and grad students no longer are eligible to study, which for those of us that are not on graduate stipends or undergraduate professor doing research, that hurts. As I mentioned earlier too, it was going to get rid of the Clery Act and dramatically increases work. So with dramatically increasing work study funding levels for undergraduate students, there's a cap on the amount of work study that a university can offer. This wants it to expand that exponentially, which makes it harder for universities to allocate those funds. So now they have all this money that they have to get out, and they have to give it to people that may or may not be qualified. So it just increases the complexity with the work study program instead of actually making it. Disbursements. So instead of getting all your financial aid going into your financial aid account at the beginning of the semester, once they total up your funding levels and then weigh that against your tuition and fee costs, it all goes into your account and then you get a electronic refund. This, it would actually disperse it every 2 weeks, so you'd be getting a paycheck, which depending on how you operate, for me, my personal finances are, I get one that's a block grant in the spring or fall and it pays for everything. So it would force some grad students to live paycheck, which some of us already or not living not paycheck. And then loan and grant counseling, you do this as an entrance and exit counseling once. So when you take out a loan, you do entrance counseling, and then when you graduate, you do exit counseling. This would make you do it every year. You'd have to go through the counseling class over and over and over. So again, it just makes things more complicated. So it's not all doom and gloom, according to NAFSA. There are some areas where it can be improved. Under this act, they could simplify the FAFSA process. I don't know if anybody else thinks it's, but I do. It takes a while, and it would just make it easier based on your answers to your initial screening questions. It would make the process, and it would allow the federal government to keep but it would allow the federal government to keep a record of student behaviors. And here's, going back to their presentation from earlier, SAGE is really concerned, as you saw, we're losing a lot of funding. It cuts $15 billion out of federal student aid. Most of that going towards grad students. So if you're watching, hopefully watching, you're going to lose a lot of money. It also caps borrowing at $28,000, which not a lot, especially for some people. And an overall cap of $150,000. So
Which includes your undergraduate loan.
right. So that's not good. And again, it gets rid of the PLUS loan, gets rid of work study programs, gets rid of the teach grants and the loan forgiveness. It's something that SAGE is watching. It's something that we should watch too as a summer as we come into the fall. We don't have a resolution on it this semester, but we're gonna the external legislative committee is going to keep an eye on it through the summer, and then we come back in the fall. If it's moved through, and however the Senate reacts, we'll look to react. But right now, most of the provisions, the vast majority of the provisions, are going to hurt us instead of help. And again, it fails to make campuses safer, gets rid of the Clery Act, so it just makes it more difficult to report sexual assault and for universities to respond to these.
So this is like a giant bill. They're supposed to reauthorize it every 10 years, which they definitely don't do. And then they're trying to do it now, but the lady that wrote it pretty much by like within committee, didn't allow any edits, pushed it out within a week. So there hasn't been a lot of collaboration on this. The Senate side is trying to push a bill out, and they're doing it more bipartisanly. But I'm not sure when they're gonna be able to get it out. But there's repercussions for us from a financing perspective, but there's also a lot built into it just for funding from a university standpoint. There's other implications that we didn't get to about how this would impact how state universities are funded and things like that. What accountability and things tied to that. So just recommend that all of you keep an eye on this because it's really important and could really have huge. Question?
What's the timetable for this moving forward? Because y'all are keeping an eye on it. Is it possible that this thing just passes without us getting the opportunity to put an input, or?
I don't think so, because the House, from when we were on the Hill, what we heard was that on the House side, there's not enough votes to pass it. So they're not going to bring it on the floor, but she is trying to bring it on the floor. But everyone keeps telling us, even everyone we met with said, we're not going to vote for this. But the Senate side that's another issue. And typically bills look more like Senate versions. So if we were to hear anything, they would still have to come up with a Senate version and then do the whole thing. So. But yeah, maybe, I mean, I don't know, maybe by the time we come next, something would have already passed, like the tax bill.
Yeah, there have been some rumors that Prosper might get to the House floor soon, but again, you'd have to go to the Senate. The Senate wants to start from scratch, then they'd have to pass that, go to conference, and vote on the. From what I've heard, it's not going to make it. But
Any other questions?
I guess one point to clarify is for the annual graduate loans, there is an exception for health field. So vet sciences, if you're going to be a doctor for medical school or doctor pharmacy or dentistry, your loans cap at $250,000. So there's like an extra boost because those schools are more expensive. But again, and there are higher annual limits too. But still, if you have a family or something, that's still, or if you're in like an expensive city like New York, that 28 or I think 30,000, 35,000 for a medical field, that's not going to go far.
Moving on, we'll now have a city bus use presentation. So, how many of you use the buses on campus? Show of hands. A lot of us. How many of you are a little bit frustrated with the lack of coverage of the bus system in certain parts of the city? Yeah, yeah. How many of you have ever used the city bus system? 1, 2. Okay, so we see these dwindling numbers. This presentation is being put together as a response from the Graduate Communicators Yeah, it's a big acronym that I can never remember. So this is a part of it. We want to make sure that information is disseminated on how to actually use the bus system. It is free. If you have your student ID, you are already in the system. You can use the bus system, right? So, how to get started? There's a website, www.btd.org. That is a Brazos Transit District, right? This is the group responsible for all of the buses in the area. They have a pretty clean website. I would suggest you share this website with your constituents if you share nothing else in this presentation. It's pretty straightforward. It's a pretty good website. All the information you need to know, find the nearest route near you. All right. When you figure out when the bus is going to be there, give it like plus or minus 5 minutes. Okay. Be patient. There's going to be traffic variation. When you see the bus, leg it down. Okay. When you come there, show your ID and know where you're going to be going. All right. Make sure you know if you need to make a connection. They do have several transfer stations. Otherwise, just pay attention to the schedules and the routes, all right? They do have quite a lot of coverage. Up at the north end, there's downtown Bryan. They go pretty far to the south, all right? So you can see they cover a large portion of Bryan and College Station that the bus service does not. And so this may be a good way to supplement public transportation in the city, depending on where you live. All right. You can see all these stops here for all of the. I mean, they have a lot of stops, and so if the university bus system doesn't quite meet people's needs, it's definitely worthwhile going on finding nearest routes. Okay. They do have a lot of routes. All right. There's stuff in here. You can see the fares and passes, but just remember you have your student ID. You should be set with that. Okay. Make sure you know the rules. No eating, no drinking, no smoking, etc. All the stuff that essentially says be courteous to the people around you. Right. So how to do ride and demand? So there are certain services that are offered for individuals who are not able to get to the bus routes or are too far from the bus routes. You can essentially call up and say, "Hey, I still need a ride." And so this works very similarly to the regular buses. You kind of get a time and a place. You should recognize this is not going to be like a taxi service, and so this is still a bus. They're picking a lot of people up and they're dropping a lot of people off. So it's not going to be get picked up, dropped off immediately. It's going to be a windy route. You're going to be somewhere in the line. All right. But this is also an option. Best way to get into this is go to that website. All right. Any questions? Berna.
The last thing you mentioned, is that one
Good question. I would imagine there is a significant limitation at night, but well, check the website. We'll tell you.
7 a.m. to 5
Cool.
p.m.
Okay. Leo.
So you mentioned that we're allowed to use it with our student ID. Are we paying student fees?
So
Do we know
right
how-
now, it is my understanding, probably should double check on this, but it's my understanding that right now we have an agreement with Brazos Transit District so that they have individuals who pay their fees, they get their passes, and they can ride our buses as well. So we get to ride theirs kind of equally, right? So I believe that is how that works out. We're already paying, and so we're paying for ours. They have an agreement so that they can trade passengers. Ben. Awesome. Also, there is a bus route, campus bus route, that does have a stop at their nearest transfer station. Here's a campus. I believe there's a transfer station here that there is a bus route that goes up there. I didn't look up the number, sorry. Okay, cool. Any other questions?
Does this include Blaine?
I think the only bus that goes to Lynn is,
So, I think
there's
it's
a campus bus, well,
which we're gonna be changing, but there will still be a bus to Blinn. I don't think it'll be 12 anymore,
or
but
does Lynn have their own bus?
I was under the impression Blinn was through this, so I don't know. That is something that I'll have to look at. No. But yeah, any other questions? I direct you to the website. It's a pretty good website. And this is a very shallow presentation. Okay. All right, with that, let's move on. We do have 2 resolutions tonight. I'd like to welcome Pratishma and Matthew up. There's been a motion to add an item to the agenda to add the Student Research Week update before the resolutions. Is there a second? There's been a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none.
Is this already on the agenda?
I don't believe it's on the agenda. I did not receive any presentation at the time. So. All right. Any other discussion? There's a motion to move to previous question. We're just gonna skip that and go straight in. All right, all in favor of adding it to the agenda, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say nay. All right, with that, we will now be going to the Student Research Week.
So for anyone that I haven't met yet, my name is Taylor Smaka. I served as the Student Research Week Director this year. Everybody should know by the amount of emails we sent out that Student Research Week was March 19th to the 3rd. So just to give you a little bit of an overview of what we did this year, some of our numbers that we ended up with, I just want to give everyone a fine report of Student Research Week. So we had 4 days of competition this year, so Monday through Thursday. A lot of years in the past, we've only done Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but this year is the first year we broke 800, so we really did have all 4 days. We had 108 sessions, first year oral sessions throughout the week, 874 competitors. Last year we had 709, so we have 100 more competitors this year. Also, we had 205 judges, 100 volunteers, 354 graduate students, 520 undergraduate students. The graduate student and undergraduate student numbers, last year we had about 40 more graduate students this year, but our undergraduate numbers went up about 130 last year. And then we were able to award about $34,000 to our students. So this is just a breakdown of the numbers of our participants that we had for our undergraduate participation numbers. For the first time in a really long time, engineering was not our biggest college, actually that meant this year. So we had about 100 more undergraduate students from veterinary medicine that participated with us this year than did last year, which beat out engineering for undergraduate students. And for our graduate students, engineering was the largest, but followed by ag life, which is pretty common throughout the years. Total number of participants, vet med was larger than engineering by about 2. So that was more traditional as to what we do here. But the largest loss that we saw between the 2 years was also in ag life, that we had about 20 students more last year than we did this year. But that was the largest drop that we saw in numbers. Aside from about 5 colleges that stayed around where they were last year, we saw increases in numbers of participants. then for our judge participation numbers, they were about where they were last year. We had 5 more judges participate with us this year than had in than did last year. So we had 205 judges, but not necessarily just, as I mentioned, we had 108 sessions. Each session has 2 judges. So a lot of our judges do volunteer to judge with us for more than one session. So especially with our faculty judges or our staff judges, it's important for us to be able to have enough judges for graduate sessions. But aside from that, 80% of our judges from year to year are generally graduate students. So if you didn't participate with us this year, we hope to see you next year as one of our judges. It's really important so that we can make sure that our sessions aren't super long and just so that we have enough. And then some of the updates that we did for this year as opposed to previous years. So we shortened our session times. Last year, our oral sessions were about 3 to 3.5 hours. This year, none of our oral sessions went over 2 hours. Our poster sessions were 1 hour and 40 minutes each. Last year, they were 2.5 hours. Also, we were able to offer headshots for all of our participants, as well as just any A&M students who wanted to attend. We had more thematic sessions. So in the past, a lot of the sessions were broken down just between colleges. So that's the way that a lot of the funding goes. But this year, our sessions coordinators really worked to make sure that the sessions that students were in had something to do with what they were actually doing. So, you know, if you're in sciences, you're not a chemistry student sitting in a statistics session. So that was something that they really tried to work on. Of course, when we really get down to the nitty-gritty, we don't have enough judges or we just really don't have enough sessions. Sometimes you might be put in a session that's not 100% just similar presentation. Also, we had earlier registration this year. One of the issues that we always run into is there's just never enough time to make sure that all the schedules are set and that our judges know their schedules because we do run right into spring break. So this year we opened registration about 3 weeks before we did last year, along with closing it about 3 weeks earlier as well. So going into next year, definitely something I'm recommending that they do again. It really helped us to make sure that we could get those schedules out so that when we did run into problems with students who couldn't make it or we needed to do judge schedules, we did have enough time to do that. We also redesigned our judge rubrics. I don't know if anyone was a judge with us in 2017 and in 2018, but if you were, you would have noticed that this year we used carbon copy rubrics as opposed to in the past you had to fill out 2 different forms with pretty much the same information. So really just trying to make every effort we can to make the judges work easier so that they continue volunteering time with us. And then one of the things that we were really the most excited about implementing for this year was the SWW app. It's always something that we hear from faculty and staff members that they have students who present in Student Research Week and they don't know where their presentations are or they want to see a list of all the presenters. And it was really the first way that we were able to kind of look at Student Research Week and say, we're in our 21st year, how do we make it bigger, how do we make it better? And that was really the transition into having an app. So we are making this into a conference that we want to see grow and we want to see more students come out and participate, and students who may not be participating in SWW, but we want them to be attending these talks and attending these events. We really saw that as the best way to do that. So just to give you a little bit of information on the app, we had 489 downloads of the actual app itself, and then we also had 90 web sessions. So you were able to access all of the information that was on the app, so abstracts, student presentations, we could register to attend talks through the app itself. If you didn't have a smartphone or you didn't want to download it on your phone, you could also access all of that same information online. And then we also had over 4,000 unique guide sessions. So those are actually people going into the app, viewing the information, clicking on different presentations. And about 3,500 of those were actually sessions. And then I just put up the top 2 presentations that people clicked on the most to find out a little bit more about. Each of those 2 had about 60 views on them or 6 registrations. And for next year, Student Research Week is going to be March 18th to the 22nd. So again, it's going to be that week just after spring break. But if you do have any questions about Student Research Week or if you're interested in possibly serving on the committee next year and you have any questions for me, please do let me know. I'd be happy to answer any general SWW questions.
First of all, you did a great job on Student Research Week here. And I was curious about how you're going to transition the app.
Sure. So definitely since it is a role that transitions over every year, we can't just build it in and say like, this is what we're doing. So it will have to certainly be a conversation that the director and the committee have along with Jamie. Because this was really the first year that we did it, and we wanted to, before we signed a contract to stay for like multiple years, we wanted to see how it worked this year, what our numbers were, can we keep the app that we have, or do we, do you have to re-download something? So in my transitions, it is something that I'm suggesting that we continue to do. And I think that there is a lot more potential of things we could have done this year, looking back and saying like all of these different functions that we had. So it's something I'm going to suggest that they do, but
Any other questions? Yes.
I never received that. So the company who did that should have sent him an email, probably a week or two ago, but they are online on their website. It's just specialty photography. Unfortunately, because it's open to everyone, I can't just send out one email to the people that I know attended. So I'll follow back up with them and just let them know. But they are on their website. And if you send me an email, which is just really at gmu.co, I'll send you a link.
Thank you. All right. With that, the next item on our agenda is the travel awards resolution. Dishman Matthew. This one? My bad. I pulled it off the resolution, so someone else spelled it wrong too. Oh, maybe I lied. Okay.
So my name is Patricia, and I'm the award sharer. So you all know, there's a lot of demand for travel awards, and going on conferences for that. So this year, like last year and the year before, we're going back for more funding to fund all these conferences. So this resolution is basically support of that.
The difference is we have a new vice president for research, which is the provider, and he said about 4 or 5 things during student research week that inclined to us that there might be changes. So I think now's the time for us to formalize some of those requests and go back and meet in the next 2 weeks.
So the resolution supports increased funding to the travel awards presented by Professional Hockey and Mathematics on May 1st, 2020. Whereas the Graduate and Professional Student Council exists to govern and to serve as the voice of all graduate and professional students at the university. Whereas the need for funding for graduate and professional students to travel to conferences to present their research supported by the Vice President for Research, BPR office, has surpassed the current funding amount provided. Presenting and attending professional conferences are a vital part of being graduate and professional students, enhance graduate students' professional development as a high impact practice. Whereas currently GPSC receives $10,000 a year from BPR's office to fund the Graduate and Professional Student Council Travel Award. The fund is awarded to graduate and professional students throughout the year in 4 terms: fall, winter, spring, and summer. 5 years ago, in 2013-14, there were a total of 138 applicants, but this number has increased to 485 applicants by 2017, which is an increase of 250%. However, the total amount awarded has not increased in these 5 years. On average, in academic year 2017-18, 5% of the eligible applicants who applied for GPSC Travel Awards were awarded the travel. And whereas the respondents, the Graduate and Professional Student Council's Quality of Life Survey 2017-2018 indicated a lack of funding either by the department or their personal financial limitation as a reason for not attending professional conferences. In line with the second imperative in Vision 23, that is to strengthen Texas A&M graduate program, the GPSC advocates to increase funding sources for graduate and professional students to attend professional conferences and enhance the professional development. Let it be resolved, the Graduate and Professional Student Council at Texas A&M requests the Vice President of Research to increase funding to the Graduate and Professional Student Council's current travel awards to meet the needed students at an award percentage rate of 10%. Let it be further resolved, a copy of this resolution shall be posted in the
Yeah, that is the graduate and professional student leadership group.
The acronym I can never remember.
That's your name.
All right.
So you guys are asking for 10% based off of the most recent application?
Correct.
Well, but the application has been, it was 138 in 12/15, and then it's gone up.
But you're saying 10% of the 485 is reserved. If you want that.
No, what we're saying is of the people that applied this year, we were able to award travel funds to 5%. What we would like is to be able to award travel funds to.
That's like
So that's-
50 people.
Well, so I'm just wondering, do we want to ask for a specific amount, or do we want to ask for percentage?
Right now, a percentage or higher, because we are not privy to what that total budget is. So we don't want to go in and ask for a fixed amount and that be way too low or way too high. So we don't have the data on the amount that we'll get. We're hoping that that'll be an easy number for them to BPL's office to do.
So I mean, if it's 10%, like how much would you be asking?
10% would be 20,000.
You
If it's
don't
going to
wanna
give us
ask for
60K, we're
amount.
going to say no, we just want that.
So the concern with not giving a specific number, you're worried that we're gonna ask for too little, Matthew?
Yeah. If we say we want 20,000 and he says, "Oh, great, I was going to give you 50," then we've just shot ourselves in the foot as an organisation. Whereas if we say we'd like 10% or greater, what the last line said, then there's an opportunity there to negotiate around our needs. If we're going to say a fixed amount, if we're going to say a fixed dollar amount, there's no point in the meeting, it should just be an email. Where I succeed in my job is where I can go to a meeting and negotiate why there's not a fixed resolution.
I would argue that you're still asking for something too low because the increase in the money stays the same, and the increase in the number of students applying to it.
It says 10% or greater.
Right, but I'm saying we should have a minimum that is high.
What do you mean by minimum?
You would prefer you have something like 15 to 20%.
Because even though you're doubling it from 5% to 10%, that's not keeping in line with 10% will be appropriate if we increase to 100 applicants, but we increased it almost 500 applicants. We should be asking for probably 20% in line with that funding that we're achieving.
We could, and I hear what you're saying. The counter argument all the time will be that we are not the primary source of funding. So you should go, there's money from OGAMS you can get one time, you should be going to your college money, you should go to department money. There's a lot more pressure on PIs and our chairs funders. So the GPSC should be your last resort for funding. So we need to be a little bit delicate with the route that we go down in terms of supply and demand and what we ask for.
Tyler, would you like to make a motion for an amendment?
It will become.
Anyone else?
I mean, I don't have numbers for you right now, but what I understand.
And the VPR has just come from the university.
So that's why I just think $10,000 is just so little.
It's not $10,000. It's 10%. It's $20,000.
$20,000 is so little.
It really is, like, compared to other universities.
Or
I mean,
greater, or
the
greater.
funding structure is also very different at those.
Yeah,
I-
it has
I
to.
think-
It has
I
to
think
come
we
from
could ask
somewhere.
for more.
Jamie?
500.
Okay.
So currently, all the people that apply, we award a ratio of 5%. So everybody in the room applies, we're going to award travel funds to 5%. What we're asking in here is that of everybody in the room that applies, we can award a ratio at 10%. Currently, we are given $10,000 and we distribute all of that $10,000. This 10% would mean that we're given $20,000 and we would distribute all of that $20,000. Key word that you're all missing in the resolution is or greater. Okay, so ideally, the lowest bar we're going to walk away from that meeting with is asking for 10%. Okay, the upper bar will go as high as he'll go. Yes.
Tyler,
Could we include a line suggesting that? So it says we're asking for 10% or greater, but then somewhere in the body of the document, mention what that funding rate was. There as a reference. Resolution.
There is, so probably are bad because the way our system works here, there is a whole presentation that goes with this resolution that talks about all the numbers that I've mentioned. Okay, so this is us backing ourselves up with this resolution, saying that this is what the GA wants.
do you have that
and GA
presentation?
representation. Yeah.
While I'm not able to make motions, would anyone like to make a motion that they actually present that presentation? Feel free to say no.
I moved to just see that, like a quick picture of that numbers, the whole presentation.
I have it in my.
There's a motion to include a presentation.
In my folder, and there's that one slide. Shows the numbers.
That's a wavering, like,
What if the number drops?
yeah, and then we have to give up more money. Like,
I will say this year is not our greatest number of applicants over our 50-year history.
Yeah, it has gone up down there. The slide that Chris is going to pull up,
Where is it?
it's in my folder, end of year report, and then
I have an idea from the amendment. Move the percentage that.
Can't do it on here.
To say that is more in line with our current.
yeah, I'll accept that as an amendment because the 10% seems to be the
What is the wording?
sticking point, right? It's a no.
An award percentage that is more consistent with our increased rate of application.
You have to point that out in the presentation. If you see the number of applicants, it started 138, and then it went up to 400 something. That's a very tiny amount from 400 to 40. So the increase in past few years is not from the very beginning.
The increase looks a bit like a stock influx, but the overall increase is a straight line. Overall
Can I
increase.
just ask a question to everybody, like, do your department, does your department or your college provide funding?
Overall.
Very limited. Does your department offer funding for travel? Does your college provide funding?
Is your funding dependent on your library?
And quick show of hands, who's already accessed the OGAPS money?
So like, who chooses not to attend a conference because they can't obtain funding to go to a conference? Anyone?
We talked about second conference,
Well, there's a conference.
first
that-
conference.
Yeah, there's like a conference you want to attend because it's good for your professional development, or your advisor wants you to go, but you don't have the money, so you choose not to go. Because the college.
I thought that the OGAPS travel grants, that's like, if you're absolutely desperate and your boss cannot like at all give you, like, my guy might have the money, it doesn't mean they're going to fund me. So like, I don't think it's eligible to apply.
You can get it one time, but you should go through like your advisor department, college first.
So again, just because they have the money, doesn't mean. So
With
I wouldn't be eligible.
The OGAPS money is almost no strings attached. You don't have to show need. You don't have to show need. Francisco.
Different discussion, Sarah.
So I understand the concept of the or greater so that you can negotiate with Dr. Bateau to try to get
just maybe close the deal before a permit takes over? Because you're gonna be done in a month. And so is there a plan for this transition? Because
I'm confident I can get this done before I leave office. But I appreciate your.
like if you're talking to him and the permit takes over, you know about
Yeah.
outstanding, and so then you restart.
No, so thank you, Francisco, for your question. All of the meetings that we have regarding funding, we follow up with a memo that gets signed off by the person who's giving the money. And that's our standard operating. So don't worry. We've been lining up for this for a while, and we've been waiting for the new cards to come.
Matthew accepted it as a friendly amendment. It's going to move to the previous question, which will close discussion time. Is there a second? All in favor of moving to the previous question, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. All right, with that, discussion is closed. It's not connecting to the screen. All right. Now, we are voting on the resolution as it stands. All in favor of passing this resolution as it stands, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, please say nay. All right, resolution passes. Thank you. Next up on the agenda is our Silver Taps letter resolution, translation resolution. Saloni and Matthew.
Howdy everyone, I'm the International Student Affairs Chair. So last year in the fall semester, we witnessed passing away of two international graduate students, and they were honored at the October Silver Tap ceremony. So once we attended that ceremony, we worked with IJS and Indian Graduate Student Silver Tap letters for the parents and families of those students, because while we were attending the funeral ceremony, we realized that the parents were not comfortable and we really wanted them to know that we stand with them and that the Aggie family is there for them. So we translated the letters in their native language. So this resolution is basically taking that work forward so that in the future, if there are more international students wherein their families do not understand English, then we can pass on this to their families by translating letters in their native language.
I had a conversation yesterday, day before, with Angela Winker, who works for ODSL but liaises with the Traditions Council. Her name is on there. She will receive this asset, and she's very excited and for the GPSE to set this up and for this to become a process that we recognise. 40% of the graduate students are international students, so we need a method in place for when things like this happen. So this is a formalization of something that we've already done earlier in the year. Okay? So we're not saying we're going to do this. This isn't like new. We have done this already. Only formalized. Yeah.
Resolution for translating Silver Taps letters presented by Saloni Bafna and Matthew J. Edges on May 1st, 2018. Whereas the Graduate and Professional Student Council exists to govern and to serve as the voice of all graduate and professional students in the university. Whereas Silver Taps is one of the oldest and finest traditions of the technical and student body. It is that final tribute paid to an Aggie who, at the time of their death, was enrolled in graduate or undergraduate courses with technical and university. Whereas at each ceremony, the students write letters to the family of the fallen Aggie, and when an Aggie is an international student, it is possible that their native language is not English, and the family of student is unable to read those Silver Taps letters. And whereas this collaboration between the Graduate and Professional Student Council and the Students' Council will resolve this linguistic challenge for grieving families and enable them to read the letters. Let it be resolved, the Graduate and Professional Student Council at Texas A&M University wants to help in translating the Silver Taps letters. The International Student Affairs Committee will coordinate with International Student Services and Traditions Council to support translating letters for international students with non-English language parents whenever possible. Let it further be resolved, a copy of this resolution shall be posted and delivered to
Courtney?
I'd like to make a friendly amendment in the translating letters for international students with non-English language parents, but I think it's possible for students who aren't international to also have parents who maybe don't speak English, so we could just change that to students.
You accept this?
Thank you, Bonnie.
Tyler?
This also needs to be updated for the international student affairs committee. Friend, our bylaws need to be.
Say that again, Tyler?
If the international student affairs committee is going to be responsible for coordinating, then it in our bylaws or.
Okay,
Job
so-
of the international student affairs.
I understand what you mean.
It needs to be, let it be resolved in our bylaws.
Would you like to propose wording?
Let it be resolved that the Constitution and bylaws of the Graduate and Professional Student Council will be updated to reflect.
Does this also include undergraduate students who speak languages?
No, the bit above talks about what silver tax is. We are dealing with graduate students. We have the graduate and professional. PA will do the same for undergraduate. That is so their choice. I think that Amy Sharp side.
Is that what you're saying?
Traditions Council is a committee of SGA.
Is that what you proposed? Please point them out so I can fix it.
Students should be capitalized.
Which one?
Student Council.
The resolve needs this resolve.
Further resolved.
Is there?
So just to clarify.
Okay,
this
there,
one,
so, I'm sorry, to be clear, there has been a motion to add this amendment. Was it accepted as a friendly amendment?
So, the structure that we followed last time was, you will never really know who can do that for you because you cannot predict what's gonna happen. So, since the international students were from India, we collaborated with Indian Graduate Student Association. So basically, what we expect to happen in the future is to collaborate with the student association from that country. Through ISS, if you don't really know someone, then you can just go to ISS and they can help you with because they're interested in helping us out. So they can help you with finding the people from those countries and approach them and ask them if they're ready to help.
To be clear, right now on the floor, we are asking the authors of the resolution, if they accept this, let it be resolved as a friendly amendment.
We do.
All right, thank you. Let's move on. What was next?
I was wondering who is going to.
Every year, as per our bylaws, there has to be a review of the bylaws where they will be updated. I would believe we do have a couple of other resolutions that also require bylaw changes, and so part of that review will be done by the next XCOM, and that's part of their duties. And so they will be presenting a resolution at the beginning of next fall semester, much like we did, where we present changes.
And more resolution.
Part of overseeing that does fall to the executive vice president, if that's what you're asking. All right, are there any other questions? Statements, comments, concerns? Verna?
Out of curiosity, how many letters?
So there were about 200 letters. I personally asked a few friends of mine and we personally wrote about 80 of them and the IGC did about 100.
Yes.
Is there provision in the resolution for compensation for the labor and perhaps to obviously can't predict it, but is there provision to compensate the
Well,
labor?
it's a self-service
It's a-
act through in GPSA and commissions. fairness, there will never be compensation.
Anyone else? Tyler, did you have a hand? Yeah. We're moving to the previous question. There's a second. With the second, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, with that, we are closing debate and questions. We are moving straight to the vote of the resolution. So, vote yay, we pass this, it gets sent out, we will update the bylaws, and the GPSC will begin translating letters for students whose families do not speak English. All right, if we vote nay, we simply drop the resolution. It doesn't mean that we are opposed to translating it. It means we simply didn't take a stance on the issue. All right, all in favor of passing the resolution as it stands, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say nay. All right, thank you. Resolution passes. All right, with that, move on to me, the EVP report. I'm going to cede my time as this is going to be wrapped into the end of year report under the president. So we'll now move to the graduate assistant position requirements and benefits update from Matthew Etchells.
Yeah, I know you can.
Okay, moving from that, we'll move to the Matthew Gaines project update from Matthew Etchells.
You can skip that again. I'm going to kill that and then we get stuff.
All right, from that, we'll move to the end of your report. This does include bits and pieces from the various officers. So why don't we start in the order of the officer reports? Begin with the Vice President of University Affairs.
Okay, I'll try to make this short and sweet because I know Matt is going to talk for probably 3 hours or so. Relax. It's in good jest. So as the Vice President of University Affairs, I've been responsible for our representation on external committees and some other task forces and that sort of thing that pop up around the university. So this year we've had 21 different graduate students serving on 30 different operational groups, as well as these different panels and honor council. 5 of those were our GPSC officers, so myself, Matt, Chris, Courtney, and Nanya. And then we had 8 of our committee chairs also serving on some operational groups. So 6 delegates served, so thank you to those delegates if you're here today. Thank you for serving. And then we had 2 graduate student volunteers who one serves on the Student Health Advisory Committee, and I forget where the other was, probably on Honor Council. So the Graduate Appeals Panel, I don't think anyone's actually been called for that this year, which is a good thing, because usually that's used to resolve conflicts between like advisors and departments and that sort of thing. So to my knowledge, no one's been called this year, so that's pretty good. The University Disciplinary Appeals Panel, that deals with student disciplinary cases, and then the Aggie Honor System Office Honor Council deals with academic misconduct, so things like cheating, plagiarism. So basically, graduate students are serving on these panels in cases that involve graduate students. So it's really important that we keep up our representation on those panels. These are the 30 different operational groups that we've been serving on. I'm not going to go through all of them. This is a summary. We served on 20 different standing university committees, things like the Council for the Built Environment, Council for Principal Investigators, things that have to have a big impact on the university level. Oh, I can read from these TVs. I don't have to look back there. Student leadership groups, some of those are the GIPSL that Matthew started, other things like the President Student Leader Group, the Student Body President Roundtable. And then we have also served on 4 special temporary committees, including the Richard Spencer Response Task Force, the Matthew Gaines Committee, which Matthew had a big part of, and the Thursday Football Task Force, which I'm serving on. So in addition to talking about our representation across the university, I wanted to talk about some of the projects that I completed and I'm working on, and then I'll go through some of the subcommittees that our chairs have been working on, and I can't take credit for any of that. I just got charged with presenting it, but our committee chairs have done a lot of really good work on their own. So I crafted a new delegate orientation presentation, which hopefully y'all remember from the beginning of this year. That'll be being passed down to the new VPUA. I worked with OGAPS to improve their web services, things like their thesis and dissertation submission services, your degree plan services, all sorts of those online things through OGAPS. A lot of it was like really, really old fashioned, and a lot of different systems were involved that weren't talking to each other. Some of it was on physical paper still. Even within their own office, they were printing stuff out and bringing it to a different person in their office. So there were a lot of places where those processes were getting slowed down. So I worked with them and a consultant group that removed or automated over 500 of these pressure points, and hopefully those will be deploying over the next year or two. I worked with ODSL to improve student rules and regulations wording to better represent professional students. Chris was very involved in that as well. And I served on a number of operational committees, those 30 committees. Things that I have ongoing, I'm developing a university contacts transition document, which is also for the incoming executive committee. I will be continuing to serve on the Thursday football task force, which y'all should be getting some communication, hopefully tomorrow, but at the very latest by the end of finals. There will be a communication coming out for that group, kind of priming y'all to be prepared for that Thursday football game on the first week of school next year. There are going to be some lots that are going to be pretty severely affected around the stadium, but for the most part, it should be all right. And they are trying their hardest to not have to tow on that day. So they want everybody to be very well informed, and you will be receiving communication. I am currently organizing the Coles Graduate Student Roundtable with the new Dean of the College of Agricultural and Life Sciences, Dr. Stover. If you are in the College of Agricultural and Life Sciences, consider this your final warning. You need to talk to me tonight if you want to be involved with that and have not emailed me yet, because I'm going to be finalizing that list tomorrow and communicating with their office on the list of who's coming. So you've had like 3 or 4 weeks now to get with me on that. And then I've also served on the Honor Council in the University Disciplinary Appeals panel. So our diversity and inclusion chairs, it's Will Marie and Jeffrey. They served on a hiring committee. I don't think they had a vote on that, but they provided the graduate student perspective on the different candidates for the Vice President of Diversity. They organized and hosted diversity meet and greet on campus, a number of interdisciplinary dinners, and they worked very closely with Step In, Stand Up to address those SASH issues on campus. Sarah Hartman, can we give a wave? That's her. That's her. She's the real one's right there. She has done a lot of stuff this year. I can take absolutely no credit for any of this. Sarah's been awesome. She organized the video spotlight, converting our GPSC research spotlight into a video spotlight, including the video travel award, which is kind of tied into that. She put together a seminar calendar, which has all the different seminars from across campus, so you can see the different seminars going on in different departments and that sort of thing if you're interested in research outside your department. The tour of the DMD facilities, that was Sarah and Matt. The IRB survey and questionnaire, the Grad Aggies advanced certificates. She worked very closely with all of those projects. And she's still working even beyond her tenure ending today on developing a research database and putting together the IRB help sessions. Do you know when those are going to be?
No, that is.
Gonna push that up. Okay. She's sending it on to next year. So our International Student Affairs Chair, Saloni, want to give a wave? You just saw her up here. So she, as you are very familiar with, she organized the letter translation for Silver Taps, which has now finally been formalized. She's been collaborating with ISS on speeding up the I-20 process, and she's also continuing to work on recruitment for the International Student Board, which is kind of a sister, younger sister to this body here. It's comprised of a bunch of different graduate student leaders from different international student groups. She's working with ISS and other student organizations to build a communication channel for international students, and working with departments to improve the physical check-in process for international. So that's it. I think the committee chairs that are technically my subordinates, but have been very, very independent. I think they all did a great job, and I had a really great experience serving y'all this year. And with that, I think I'll be turning it over to the Vice President of Finance. Unless you're next. Are you going?
Next we will have Vice President of Information.
You went last week.
Yeah.
Courtney.
I already
give my presentation last week, but I just want to make an announcement. Since there's lots of new delegates here, actually during the meeting, I created a registration form and I put it up on the website. So if you're here, if you can fill out the registration form, it's gpsc.tamu.edu. I put a link there so you can put in your name, your email address, and your department, and then I'll put together like a spreadsheet, pass on to Danielle, our new VPI. That way we can contact you when the first meeting of the fall is coming up. So hopefully, like we don't lose it. Moving into the fall, so we can transition more smoothly. If you know who your delegates are going to be next year, but they're not here tonight, just let them know they can already register, and then they'll start receiving information from us later. It is on the website. I put it on the. You can either go to the Become a Delegate tab, or it's also like on the homepage. The first post. I created a little bit on there. All right.
All right, next will be our Vice President of Finance.
Hey, good evening, all of you. So I haven't spoken much throughout the year. I'm Ananya, and I've been working with the finances, managing budgets, working with SRW Director of Funding. Probably we'll have something for your predecessor soon. And the most important person who helped me was Jamie. So all credit goes to Jamie and Matt for helping me throughout the year. So to proceed with what we did with the finances in our organization, basically breaking up the workflow that I had for the entire year. The main thing that I started with was to manage the money that was allocated for the organization, the main core budget. We have some sub accounts which I typically do not handle. That is mostly Jamie. Again, she helped me with that, and so that I only manage the core budget, which I will show you the breakdown in a while. We talked about and we presented to SAFAB for Student Research Week Director Graduate Assistantship Funding. I'll again talk more details in a while about that. And the two committees that I had to oversee but were super independent was the awards committee that Pratishma has worked fabulously throughout the year. And programming, we initially had a lot of pitch. The entire XCOM came forward, helping with all the events. And then we had Purna, who's going to continue well through the entire head of the team next year. Okay. So this was the budget amount that was allocated this year. That's 24,330, which was a little different from last year. Not exactly that the budget was reduced. It was moved on to some basic operations. As I understand, Jamie might elaborate much more, but the main thing was we used the money quite wisely and we didn't run out of funds. We had the main budget broken down and I have just summarized it. Not like the entire breakdowns for the GA. So generally we had like a lot of office allocations, that was like the general expenses, and whatever we used for the GA meetings, that was around 800. The banquet that we had just last day, it was a super success and we had a lot of expenditures over there, but it was all worth it. So about 4,000, a little over 4,000. We had grad camp and the SRW. I have put just the operational cost over here. This is not the money that was spent for the entire entire operation. It was just the part that was allocated from the core budget. The rest comes from different funding groups from the university. Maybe it comes a little bit from VPR, a little bit from University Affairs, but this is what we allocate from our core budget. So that's like 9,000 for SRW, grad camp gets 3,500. SAGE travel was a big thing that this year we continued from last year. We had more representation from our XCOM members into this SAGE advocacy group, and we allocated more funds for that compared to last year. That is, this year we stand at 3,500. We got some funding from OGAPS, that was around 2,200. Something 2,200 separately, which I haven't put here because that didn't really come from the core budget, but they also supported us in our advocacy initiatives. And the rest of the committees that we have in our XCOM, diversity, inclusion, programming, marketing, like I have a roundup figure. That's not the exact figure, but around $2,000 was spent amongst us in different other events and initiatives. The SRW Student Research Week, we recently had the update about the entire process. Main thing about it is the person who is a director has to run it properly with her special committee, and Taylor did a great job. And for a person like Taylor or the next person who has to be on that position, we must compensate for their efforts. And that is why we have like the GA position for SRW, which has been technically covered half by OGAPS, and half of it we actually appeal every year to the Student Advancement Fee Advisory Board. We request every year, but this time we actually went out and requested to the SAFAP board having like an option for a permanent funding of the half amount of the GA position for SRW director. We are still like it's yet to be answered whether we will get that amount or not, probably by June, right? But we are hopeful we might get through, or else we will have a conversation to the BPR regarding that after like maybe in the next 2-3 weeks. Further, we had a lot of events this year regarding the programming committee. So we had blood drive. We also, not only that we spent a lot of money, we actually collaborated a lot. That was Matt's main thing, and that's reflected in all of the programming events as well. We had blood drive, we had Rudy night, we had presidential town hall in last semester. We had PhD comics thing, which was a big hit. And then that's when Purna came in, and Community of Scholars, and finally we had the banquet. And we had other diversity events as well, but this is just the little programming committee that I oversee as an officer. The next is awards. We all know that we had lots of, we had like 250% increase in awards as for the last presentation in like the last 4 years. We definitely had also included non-department organization to be eligible for awards, which is another big thing. And hopefully we'll get more money from BPR with their talks about the award allocations that reflect our resolution. So there were like travel awards, Aggie's Comet. Recently in the banquet last day, we had given out the Kunz Award, Guzman Award, and the Aggie Core Valley Award. We also actually talked about the awards at OGAPS, like we kind of propagate or facilitate the information to be disseminated from the OGAPS awards to our channels of our social media as well. So that's like Aggie's Comet, right? Okay, so that's it, and thanks, and if you have any questions.
Thank you, Nanya.
All right, I guess I'm next. Who wants to see a PowerPoint with all of our resolutions? Me neither. So too bad, Matt. You can put one together yourself then. This year we did put out 24 resolutions. All right, that is quite significant. This is our 14th meeting. That's a lot of resolutions, right? And I did very little work on any of them. So I want to thank Brenna and Amit. They have put together a lot of work. They are the ones that have been doing a lot of the legwork for a lot of projects. Please, yes. Everything from DACA to parenting to immigrant. I mean, there's a list of things that we have accomplished this year. And I'd like to point out that a lot of what these guys do, a lot of what I do is in the background. We're going and meeting with people. And this is one of the things that really makes sure that the GPSC is successful. We meet with the people who are going to be impacted by what we're asking for. And we have relationships and conversations with them ahead of time and afterwards to make sure there's follow through and follow up. And that is why when we as a body, when you guys are voting on something, it means something. It makes a difference on this campus. All right. There are other groups that put out legislation. They make asks or sometimes they make demands of the university. And I'll tell you right now, most of those written up stuff goes straight in a trash can. Not this group. This group has a strong voice, and it comes from the work that has been done by these two committee chairs and their committees, all right? I want to thank them a lot. I want to thank those of you who helped on their committees. Otherwise, I have sat on a bunch of committees, so I guess I'll give a quick rundown of that. The Council for the Built Environment, I will be the voting member next year, as I was the non-voting member this year. So I'll be coming back and giving more reports if those of you are interested in that. That's great. Otherwise, other things that I've done this year include some of the artwork for the Zachary building. So those of you who are going to still be on campus, be excited. We are going to have some international names. We are going to have a lot of really good artwork in the new Zachary building. Most of it's being installed this summer, to the point where we think that we are going to be kind of a location people visit to see art, specifically in the Zachary building. We have that big of names producing work for us. Other work I've done, I sit on rules and regulations, and so when the undergrads come and say, hey, you know those classes the graduate students teach? We want to be able to get excused absences with zero accountability. Those are the kind of things we kind of shut down a little bit in that committee, Tyler and I. Transportation services, we've been working on bikes, the bike racks. We've been talking about where they should be, talking about parking passes, when some of the faculty are talking about just taking away passes for students, we tell them that's not a good idea. When they talk about, well, we should just charge everyone on game days, and we're like, well, some of us have to be here for research. You really are going to make us pay to do the research we have to do? You know, I'm the one there that's making sure they're realizing that we have a lot of work that we have to do, and transportation services greatly impacts our lives. So I don't necessarily have a lot of specific projects on their group, but I do work to make sure that they are aware of our problems. For example, lot 18 and 73 that we brought up last time, I've talked to them about that, and they are currently gathering information on that to make sure that there's less violations there. I'll just move on to my personal projects, I guess. Some of you might remember the resolution for the bus update. I'm currently working with them on that. We've gotten them in touch with Google. I don't think Google is interested in putting our routes on the map. We're still working on it. I have some friends who work at Google, so I'm working on kind of both sides of the project. But working on that, we're trying to get updates so that they will actually tell you if buses are canceled, because I don't know about you, but I'm tired of waiting for a bus that doesn't come. And so I'll be working over the summer to get them some mock-ups on what we want. And from that point, they should be presenting resources that they would need so that we can, as a group, can make an official ask to the university to actually fund transportation services appropriately so they can make some of those changes. Previously, I talked about Wi-Fi coverage. We did find the Wi-Fi request form, unfortunately. That request form also asks for a funding source. So right now we're trying to find a workaround so that we can make requests, because a lot of us work in areas that don't have sufficient internet. And we're still looking at ways to try and get that covered. Other than that, I'll be working a little bit over the summer for a official recognition thing that's still a carryover from last year. I'm not sure how it's going. It's losing steam. So if there's any questions, I'll take them. Otherwise, we can move on and let Matt do his talking. All right, Matthew, it's time for you to do your talking. Thank you. Do you have a PowerPoint or anything? This doesn't have access to that folder. This account doesn't have access to the meeting. On.
Okay, howdy. This will be my last official presentation so I think pretty much I do have more slides, but pretty much everybody from the team and the VPs, the EVP covered their section, so I'm just going to talk about what I did this year and the kind of overall. I'll come back to my sort of closing comments later, so I'm just get down to business. So I meet with President Young once a month, with the president of the MSC, the president of the head of the core, the student body president and his number two or her number two now, and then also the speaker of the student senate. So it's quite a small group that has quite a high impact on the university. Some of the things that we discussed in that group, and that's normally about half an hour once a month with President Young. There are emails often back, and because we attend a lot of events, we also see President Young at a number of other things around the university. And the amount of time that I'm in the Jack Williams building, I also see President Young in the lobby, and we have a conversation every time I see him. So we worked on student counselling at the start of the year. It was one of the concerns that we had. We're losing about one student a month to student suicide, so I pressed President Young fairly hard at the start of the year, and that led very quickly to an increase in student counselling. They brought in 5 new counsellors. Under the Title IX, the changes for our accreditation that the university has made, we now have to offer at a distance what we also offer on campus. So one of those 5 counsellors was also a distance counsellor, and that happened right at the start of the year. We had Hurricane Harvey coming in. That meant that our organisation retreat got cancelled because of the weather. We've already talked about the 2 students that we lost, Hill and Shalini. We attended the funeral of one of those students. So I appreciate Shalini's work, sort of guiding me through that whole process and the emotions around that. We've also worked on some sexual assault pieces as well with President Young. He is very aware now of issues that we're seeing in the Committee report. 2 years ago, we had about 15 rapes on campus, and then last year we had about 30. So the Title IX coordinator, President Young, are all working on it. One piece that I worked with residence housing on with this was that we went and did an analysis of Title IX pages from other universities that are our peers in terms of institutions, and then presented all that to the Title IX coordinator. The outcome of that is going to be, I don't know if you've ever been on the Title IX page, but the outcome of that is going to be, we're going to put a report button on the top of that page. At the moment, it's very much you have to go and read through and find the information of who you should report to. As a student in crisis, you don't care about who you report to, you care about reporting. And what we saw was a bit of a divide between the universities that are really on point and the universities that are falling behind a little bit. The universities on point have that button and have the information clearly laid out. The universities falling behind don't have that button and don't have information clearly laid out. When we explained to President Young that we want to be a leader in the US with everything that we do, that moved forward fairly quickly. So that's something that's going to happen within the next year, because they have to go through the queue now for IT updates. In terms of campus climate, there's a few issues that links in sexual assault. There's a few dark areas around campus where things are poorly lit. At night, the undergraduates have deep concern about where they go. We tend, some of us at college education, we tend to leave our building at night. Those of you doing research are leaving your buildings at night. These are all concerning points for us. There's a main issue around some of the housing, the dark areas around there, especially out at White Creek, near horticulture around that area. There tends to be quite a lot of open land that's quite dark. So we're working with President Young at the moment about creating a map for the university, and creating a method where students can just say, this area is dark, and then they'll put up lighting. And if that means they bring in generators and floodlights in the interim until the lighting goes up, President Young is committed to that. We did some work with DACA. There was a big meeting around about late November, early December that involved the head of admissions, involved Dr. Hughes, Vice President of Student Affairs, involved the Provost, President Young. There's about 4 lawyers in the room at the time. There was about 3 DACA students in the room, and a number of other people in the room. The outcome of that meeting is that we are going to take care of our DACA students at the university. And a lot of that meeting was a discussion on the ways that people that want DACA students to leave universities, the kind of questions that they're asking. Okay. At the moment, DACA students are blended in with international students. There is no difference on paper between a DACA student and an international student as far as ISS is concerned. Okay, and admissions are being very careful about the questions they ask when they admit students. Okay, and a lot of concern during that meeting was, if we do something special for DACA students, we've in essence done the work for somebody else of corralling all the DACA students into a pool that is now nominated. You can now tell these DACA students because we did this. President Young, an article in Italian came out about this whole situation, and one of the things I was quoted on in that was saying that President Young is a gift to the university because he's also a lawyer. He also graduated from Harvard, so he knows what he's doing. He knows how to navigate these situations, and he knows how to talk to our state legislature about things like that. So we're making good progress there. As far as the university is concerned, what's happening in America is a wider thing, is another conversation. We talked about some freedom of speech pieces. So on September the 11th, Richard Spencer was scheduled to come to A&M. That never happened, primarily because of the work of people like the Vice President of Student Affairs, Dr. Pugh. We have now become a bit of a leader in the US for conversations around freedom of speech. And there was a document produced, by an 8-page document, out of the Vice President's office that we shared with some other states around the US and some other universities around the US, and they were able to cancel or move or diminish their divisive, what we're calling divisive speakers on campus. We also worked, the GPSC also worked with the SGA, and we created a document that if a divisive speaker comes to the university again, we have an action plan for what that will look like, and it will not result in Aggies United. Okay, the outcome will not be a $300,000 music concert in the stadium whilst we have divisive speaker on campus. We have a better plan now. Okay, so about that. So we also worked on Matthew Gaines Memorial. We do not have the creation story for A&M. We don't know where we began. We don't recognize that yet. We passed a resolution here. The week before we did, SGA in the Student Senate passed a resolution. And then the week after we did, Residence Housing also passed a resolution. Our coordination and collaboration as a team working on that, passing all 3 resolutions, came directly from us knowing each other and us working together in President Young. Okay? Without us meeting President Young and being that cohort in those moments, the Gaines resolution would not have come about. Okay? Jinty Labdilla was a driving force behind this, and now we're looking at raising $300,000 in the next couple of months, and we're looking at an unveil date of Matthew Gaines statue by 2020. So this is going to happen on this campus, and this is the 3rd time that Aggies over the decades have tried to put Matthew Gaines forward, but this time it is going to happen. President Young is committed, Division of Student Affairs is committed, the undergrads are committed, and we as graduate population, graduate professional student population. Yes. Okay. We're working on getting a T-shirt out soon. It's going to be really snazzy. Everybody gains on the back if everybody gives. Okay. Buy the T-shirt. And also we provide a student voice. So often I will be the only graduate in a room. Normally when we go to Dr. Pugh's house and it's a big 28, there'll be 28 undergraduate organizations and then little old me. Okay. So often I'm the only one in the room that gets the opportunity to kind of say graduate professional students need this. Being in those spaces, there is a cost being in those spaces sometimes because you're always the graduate one, right? But there's also a need to be in those spaces, so we'll continue to be in those spaces. A couple of initiatives that we pushed forward this year. So we worked with Dr. Bright through OGAPS, and we started the Grad Aggies initiative. So if you get your basic and intermediate certificates, you then get your advanced certificate just by being lovely people and sitting there and doing the self-service that you do for us. Okay, there are 4 graduate and professional students that got the Grad Aggies from being in this group. Okay, Hector is one. Hector, are you here tonight? Congratulations, Hector. Okay, I'm 1, Chris is 1, and Ananya is 1. Okay, so we are the 4. All right, we're hoping, and OGAPS are very excited now. They think this is a great start. 4 people did it. Okay, so we're hoping in the years to come we can grow that number. Okay, so 60-minute parking was, I think, my first week on the job last year. We moved 3 of the spaces out at White Creek from 30-minute parking over to 60-minute free parking. The thought behind that wasn't just like a park at White Creek. The thought behind that was that there were students in crisis who were going to student counselling, and we were getting data back that was saying that they were just parking and going to student counselling and then getting a ticket and then going through the extra hassle and the extra frustration of getting the ticket cancelled with transportation services. We worked with Dr. Lane in transportation services, and within a couple of weeks, they had 60-minute parking out at White Creek, and that's in 122B. If you're out at White Creek, you need something urgently, you can get 6-minute parking. Collaboration was a big piece for me. I worked on 3 things this year. One was professionalism, one was collaboration, and then one was diversity. So in terms of collaboration, we formed, as we've talked about a few times now, the Graduate Professional Student Leader Communication Group. It's getting more catchy every time I say it. Okay, so we formed that this year. That mirrors what we have with the undergrad, what we call the Big 28. That now is mirrored at the graduate level. So instead of just being the only graduate in the room, I'm now in the room with like 14 other graduate student organizations that represent the whole campus. Okay, we worked with the Postdoc Association. There are 700 postdocs. Some of you, I'm sure, are about to become postdocs, also known as purgatory. So the Postdoc Association, unlike us, has a gargantuan budget that we get from the GAR's office. So I saw quite a good collaboration there. So we've done a lot of collaborating this year that hasn't cost us a lot of money, and the GPSC tried to bring in Jorge Chan a couple of years ago and deemed it was out of our budget. We executed that this year, so Jorge Chan came in. He's also further agreed to send us some signed books and to do some artwork that's going to be just A&M. You should see something with the Century Tree in it, with the Aggie Ring in it, academic building, a few other pieces, no sort of. Okay, so we also did a lot of collaboration with SGA. I had a very strong relationship with Bobby Brooks this year. We had his back from the start of the year and worked through the whole year quite closely. I think our first meeting was about 3.5 hours, and that's been fairly standard for our monthly meeting. Plus, I see him at a ton of stuff. Already, Bernard spent a chunk of time with Amy, so we're continuing that strong relationship with the student government. Okay? The SGA represents all students on campus. We tend to think about them as an undergraduate organisation, or as graduates, but they represent all students, and that relationship is integral to our success. Okay? If we don't have a relationship with SGA, our job gets harder. Okay, so that relationship is very important. We also worked with the Vice President of Student Affairs and OGAPS. OGAPS, as you heard from Brenna, supported the SAGE trip and supported the DC trip, so we could do some lobbying and do some learning and do some advocating. The 3 students that went on that trip, that was fully funded by us. Okay, so thanks and big up. The Vice President of Student Affairs has also done a lot. I have a very close relationship now with Dr. Pugh. Mona is beginning that close relationship with Dr. Pugh. Dr. Pugh is the person that will kind of text us and call us and keep us abreast of what is happening on campus. So we knew Richard Spencer was planning to come here weeks before the student body. And there's been about 5 or 6 times during the year where I've got a message from Dr. Pugh saying, keep this under your hat for a couple of days, that this might be happening. Luckily, about 9 times out of 10, it doesn't actually come to fruition because the university does a lot of working behind the scenes to protect what our campus climate looks like. Okay, so a lot of time it doesn't happen, but I still kind of lie awake at night wondering like what's going to happen next week. Okay, so strong relationships with the administration, strong relationships with the students that we consider undergraduates, and strong relationships with our peers that we consider other graduate organisations that we represent. Okay, so Student Research Week, Taylor and I spent a bit of time this year developing a 5-year plan. We are currently in year 1, we're on track with the 5-year plan. We're going to have a conversation, there will be a conversation probably next semester now, organised by Dr. Pugh, Vice President of Student Affairs, to bring together Launch, to bring together RISE, and bring together some of the symposiums. Student Research Week will also be there, will be represented in that meeting, and there's going to be a conversation about what are we doing with research at A&M. Okay, we're the largest sort of dog in the fight, so we're going to make sure that our interests are protected. And Student Research Week this year was 21 years old. Okay, RISE, it was their first year. Launch, they've been going about 5 or 6 years. We're 21 years old. Okay, just put that in context for you. One conversation we had with OGAPS this year was an increase to the president's salary that now covers full tuition and also covers full fees. So one piece that I tried to do, this is under professionalism, one piece I want to do is move the president's salary and try and work on the Student Research Week salary and get those to where we can be competitive. So that when we look at the bell curve of salaries across the university, every single person from every single college can consider becoming the GPSC president. Traditionally, we've lost a couple of colleges because their salaries are too high, and people from other colleges saying, well, that would be a pay rise for me, or that's equal to what I'm getting paid. Okay, Now we're covering tuition, now there's actually salary, and now we're covering fees, we're now competitive. So next year, after Kerner, we should be seeing students from every single college applying to be the GPSC president. Okay, just being from 1 or 2 different colleges should be a thing of the past. Okay, so the math gain statue I've talked about, 2020, that's going to happen. You will be approached fairly soon by the foundation to start getting towards that. We did a lot of diversity pieces this year. We won an ACE award, which was pretty legit. We won that as an organization. So in essence, you as delegates are also privy to the winning of the award, so the ACE award. We supported 3 conferences this year. So WISE, which is Women in Science and Engineering. We supported WID, which is Women's International Day. We supported Electa for WISE. We supported with some grad packs. For Women's International Day and Electa, we supported by sending delegates and some of the XCOM to go and facilitate tables and politics. Okay. The Black Excellence Awards, we did 2 things with that. One, we supported them with about $300 in funding. We paid for some of their food for that. And then the second piece that we did was we fostered a relationship between the undergraduate African American student organizations and the Black graduate student organizations, so that they now are working together on the Black Excellence Awards. And for the first time this year, they gave out a Black Excellence Awards award to a member of the BGSA. That hadn't happened before. It's the first time that's happened this year. The point of that is so that the undergraduate African American students can see what the African American experience is at the graduate level, and also see African American students at the graduate level being awarded. Okay, traditionally, African American students get left out of awards and other pieces. Okay. And then finally, we formed the GPSLGC. Look at that. Okay, any questions about what I've been doing for the last 365 days? I have 1 month left, so some things to do, right, Francisco? The meetings to have. Any questions? Okay, I'll move into my closing remarks. I'll keep it short and sweet, just like I have all year. One thing I will say, we wouldn't be able to function. Who was at the dinner last night? Who was at the banquet? A couple of you all? Who tried to RSVP and couldn't get in? Oh, you? Okay, that's good. Thought it was going to be like a riot and pitchforks today. Like, where's my time? Okay. So we really blew the budget on the banquet. I apologize, Nanya. I'm uncontrollable. So one thing I will say, without the delegates, we wouldn't be able to function. It would be very dull. I already know what I'm going to say, so unless it's good. You represent your colleges. And the university listens very intently to what we do as a student organization. Okay, we represent 15,000 students across the university. When we look at the actual numbers, we're looking at about 2,000 graduates that come to campus on a regular basis. Okay, without you, we don't have a mission to execute. There's nothing for us to do, right? So we need you to be going back to your departments on a regular basis, having those conversations, the things that we talk about here, the information that we have here, make sure you disseminate that back to your departments. Okay, those of you who are incoming tonight, those of you who are new delegates coming in, you're in for a lot of work next year. But I think we've sort of laughed sometimes. There was one picture at the beginning where I'm talking at the front and you're all laughing and smiling. When this job gets hard, sometimes I kind of look at that picture for a minute and I'm like, it's worth it. Okay, it's worth it. And as I've been saying to the executive committee the whole year, my firm belief is that anybody who was on XCOM this year could have spent the year standing here as president. Okay? You know Chris could. Brennan probably should have. Okay? So, but there's a few more things. Consider yourselves in your leadership roles at the university. This year has been a lot of work, but it's also been, as my 17 years in education and all the different leadership things I've done, this has been the most significant year for me. So I want to say thank you to the executive committee. I especially want to say thank you to Jamie. I think Jamie is probably one of the most patient people that I know. And when I'm throwing out 15 ideas, she's like, I just want to clarify. I just want to come back to what you said 5 minutes ago. So I really appreciate Jamie. At the start of the year, I just had big ideas and I couldn't do anything. I couldn't execute like top. And Jamie has me thinking 2 things. She'd always say, well, how many glasses do we need? how many wine glasses do we need? How's that going to look? Like, what are we going to put on the tables? How many chairs? So she now has me thinking about like what is the finance stuff? And when I'm planning things and moving forward with things, I start thinking like, what would Jamie do? Okay? And sometimes that stops me from doing what I was going to do. Okay? Which is why I have not been impeached this year. Okay, still a month. So I will say thank you to you. I'd like to thank the XCOM. I'd like to thank Jamie, and I'd like to thank yourselves as delegates. I will remember like this time of year always. I know sometimes for you feel like you're kind of sitting here, like, oh, just travel funds, where are the travel funds? In your department, your job is important. Your job is integral to what we do. So really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
All right, I do realize I forgot voice reports. Are there any voice reports? Okay, I feel less bad then. All right. Will next year's executive team please come to the front?
We're missing one, but sorry.
Where is Daniel?
Said he couldn't make it.
There's an extra LE at the end.
Where am I?
At Bevan, instead of a Daniel, it's Danielle. Thank you.
I'm not good at this job either. All right.
You're gonna have to swear. They will have to swear.
All right. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me the oath of your office. In the presence of honored guests and the members here assembled, I state your name.
I,
Do solemnly promise and pledge
do solemnly promise and pledge
that I will faithfully execute the duties of my office
that I will faithfully execute the duties of my office
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
commit myself to the goals and objectives
to commit myself to the goals and objectives
of the Graduate and Professional Student Council,
of the Graduate and Professional Student Council,
to uphold the pillars
to uphold the pillars
of community, advocacy, and research,
of community advocacy and research,
to fairly and accurately
very accurately
represent graduate and professional students,
represent graduate and professional students,
and to assume full responsibility
and to assume full responsibility
for this honorable organization.
for this honorable organization.
Thank you very much. You've all been sworn in. All right. Do we have any advisor comments?
Oh, sure. This is related to the travel work. I know you guys been talking about very limited funds. Like doing, related to constellation, but we were able to get out an additional award this round because we were able to talk about what awards weren't claimed or if people try to get reimbursed for less than what they were originally awarded. So not much, but at least we're able to redistribute that again. Thanks for all of your hard work. Thanks for coming this year. You guys have like delegates again next year. First time we working with y'all.
All right. I don't think we have any administrator comments. So with that, if you will not be the delegate next semester, please make sure you talk to who will be, whoever it is. Please make sure they know what their duties are. Please make sure that Courtney has their contact information. That way we can hound them instead of you. All right, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Have a wonderful summer.
I can swear you if that's what you're asking.
If anyone needs gluten-free, we do have gluten-free pizza.
Unless we're going to movie. That's that question. Probably
Tyler, you're still playing.
Gonna bump me, I can't do too much work.
Yeah, so for attendance, you'll swipe in.
Sure.
Oh, you don't know? So from like the. Oh, okay. I'll mark you down. No, probably good. But I have your. Yeah. Yes, yes. So it's very important for the travel awards, so make sure when you have meetings, you always want to.